just like
right.
Oh, yes.
Yay.
All right, am I good to go?
Yes, you're great.
Fantastic. All right. Hi, everyone. Before I begin, I'd just like to acknowledge that I'm calling in today from unceded Boonwurrung land in southern Melbourne. So I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present, and also to extend my respects to First Nations people joining us today. So hi, I'm Lana. I'm the Accessibility, Inclusion and Projects Lead at Reframing Autism. I'm a late identified autistic person who is also disabled, so that's the lens that I bring to my role and also to this conversation today. Next slide. I'm going to start with a story about getting an autism and ADHD diagnosis. My assessment involved a variety of different tasks completed in person. I used my hands to arrange blocks, I used a pen to write and draw on paper, and I completed spoken word tests where words were said to me and I processed answers and responded verbally. Now is a good time to tell you that I'm deaf. So what needs to change there? I had to organise a communication partner for the intake phone call. I had to check they could and would work with me before I could get in the door. Once I was there, I was able to complete those tasks independently, but only barely. One of those tasks had a specific ban on repeating words spoken. I'm a deaf person. That's a problem. And in talking to you about this, I've mentioned the things that affected me. I haven't mentioned the fact that I needed to push open 2 doors to enter the office. I didn't visit the bathrooms during my visits. Can't tell you about that. Probably the biggest thing that I haven't mentioned is the fact that all of this cost me $1,700, which is a huge access issue in itself. I had a great experience getting my diagnosis, and none of this is reflective of the practitioner, who was wonderful. But the reason that I'm sharing that story with you is because I want to talk about disabled autistic experiences and why inclusive design practices are so important alongside neuroaffirming practice. Next slide. So when we talk about neuroaffirming practice, we mean working in ways that genuinely accept and support autistic ways of being and doing, removing barriers to inclusion and participation, and acknowledging more than one stereotypical autistic profile. That last one is important. Our community is heavily intersectional, with many of us being part of the LGBTQIA+ community, being from the CALD community, being First Nations, or having other disabilities or health conditions. We know that autistics with intersecting experiences find it harder to access what they need and feel safe getting it. We know this happens across all ages and stages and across many systems and sectors, including the NDIS. So with that in mind, let's talk about what you as an ally can do to support disabled autistics. Next slide. Right. First point, don't presume you know what support someone has or that they have support if you aren't providing it. Not all of us qualify for the NDIS, and for many, everything from seeking a formal diagnosis to applying to enter the scheme to utilising funding is a significant access barrier. Some of us might qualify for one disability type and not another, meaning some of our needs get met and some don't, which is why you should always ask about support needs and offer support proactively. Second point, not everyone discloses everything. Autistic people with disability might disclose what feels most relevant to the current situation. Some might not disclose at all because they're waiting on a formal diagnosis or they can't access one. Some people have co-occurring disabilities or other life experiences that make it hard to identify they're autistic. Some people might have an autistic child and not know they are autistic themselves. And sometimes we just forget. We have to be constantly self-advocating to get what we need. We get tired. So work with the data you have, but don't presume that that's all there is. Third point, be open to doing things differently. Systems and processes often have one way of doing things because it's convenient. A quick practical example for you. Is there more than one way to contact you? Phone versus email? If there is, do you prioritize them equally, or do phone calls get responses faster than emails do? Will you work with someone to find a solution if something else is needed? It's not about knowing exactly what is needed in every situation, but about how you respond. The last point. Consider the consequences of communication or access breakdowns. People need things. You heard that here first. People need things. And they don't stop needing things because they aren't getting them. They can need more support or end up in crisis because they're not getting what they needed in the first place, which is horrible and in many situations totally avoidable. Next slide. So let's talk about how we put my recommendations into practice. Number one, ask the experts. It's okay not to know how to best support someone's needs or how to advocate for them or how to ensure they are represented. And when you do ask an expert, make sure you pay them for their time. When working with diverse people, you might not find the one perfect consultant or organization, so consider multiple. We love making connections, and we also know what we don't know, so you can ask us about that too. The second recommendation is notice your gaps and address them. When you're in a room, whether it be a policy environment, service delivery, meeting with constituents, look around. Who's not there? Think about how people might access your work, where they may have been failed by existing systems and processes, and where you can remove barriers in the future. The points that I want to leave you with are simple. Respond to what is in front of you and don't make assumptions. Engage genuinely and from a place of allyship, and don't be afraid to get help when you need it. Thank you.